and there's something magical about, you think of all the thousands and thousands of zombie films, thousands of hours of Walking Dead. That first shot of the zombie is literally the very first zombie. Board up your windows and avoid the cemeteries, because this week it's Night of the Living Dead from 1968, directed by the godfather of the genre, George A. Romero.
With the outbreak of the zombie apocalypse, a group of strangers fight for their lives in a deserted farmhouse.
Night of the Living Dead, the absolute birth of the zombie genre. People try and come up with there was this film from 1932 that had the word zombie in it. But it's not. Zombies, as we know it in the modern era, created with this film. George A. Romero, absolute legend of the horror genre, made loads of great stuff, and obviously most known for the Dead franchise. This was pretty much a low to no budget film. Not only that, but this was his debut. A few of the cast, like Duane Jones playing Ben, were professional actors, although he was a stage actor, he'd never made film or TV before. For the majority of the cast and crew, they were all amateurs. Karl Hardman, playing Harry Cooper, was literally the producer in the film, and also the sound engineer, and did a lot of the special effects, and kind of only got roped in as one of the acting roles because they couldn't find anyone else to do it. Most of the extras were just friends and family and people from the local area that knew George. It was the kind of film that was expected to not do much of anything, but it actually ended up being a massive hit, especially in the drive-through cinema scene, and made absolutely shitloads of money for everyone but George A. Romero. Everyone knows this story by now, but there was a massive cock-up with the copyrights for the film, and it ended up falling into public domain pretty much instantly. And one of the most glaringly obvious things about how small this film's budget was the fact that it was a black and white film in 1968, when very few films were being made in black and white anymore. If they were, it was an artistic choice. But to be honest, even though it wasn't an artistic choice, it actually really works for this film, and I think adds to it a lot. There's actually been colorized versions of it, but they just don't do it for me. Like, this original black and white version has that glaring, weird, creepy look, and it also makes it stand out from the rest of the Dead franchise.
I didn't realise there was colorized versions. Might go back and watch them to compare that.
Stop it now, I mean it.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
Stop it. You're ignorant.
They're coming for you, Barbara.
Stop it. You're acting like a child.
They're coming for you. Look, there comes one of them now.
What I like about this film is it really doesn't mess about. Starts off, brother and sister drive into the cemetery, going to see the dad. The sister's getting wound up because, the brother keeps making jokes like, oh, they're coming for you.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
She's not happy. Stop messing about. You're being immature. We've seen loads of zombie films by this point. The genre birthed probably thousands of films. And we know, seeing the slow amble of the people coming towards the camera, oh, it's zombies. But of course, they don't. They get attacked. The brother fights the zombies off, saves Barbara. From seeing loads of zombie films, you either get the really slow, brain-dead zombies who can't do anything, and they're kind of easy to maneuver around. And then you get the fast zombies. And what I like about these opening scenes is we can see that the zombies are intelligent and use tools, because she's stuck in the car and one of the zombie picks up like a brick or rock and breaks the window. So straight away I was like, shit, these are going to be difficult fuckers.
Well, that's an interesting point, because you said before, that first shot of the zombie, and there's something magical about, you think of all the thousands and thousands of zombie films, thousands of hours of Walking Dead. That is literally the very first zombie. It's not just him looking around like in a close-up. It's this distant thing that slowly is approaching, while the lightning strikes are starting to light up the area, and it's getting all cloudy, and the atmosphere is kicking in. But also, you said about the zombie using a tool, essentially using a weapon, picking it up, and he also moves pretty fast. Some have said in the original scripts that there was descriptions of the zombies as moving slowly. There's been other myths going about that. The only reason the zombies ever moved slow in the first place was because the makeup would fall off if they moved too fast, and that's why they moved so slowly. And this first zombie, they had more time to work on him, and that's why he moved so fast. Probably, bits of truth to both of them, you're not really sure. But it is that interesting thing where, considering Romero is, I wouldn't say hostile, but he's very protective over what is and what isn't a zombie. He doesn't like the rules being changed. You spoke about like the fast zombies and the slow zombies, and to me, there's zombies and then there's rage virus films, like 28 Days Later and that sort of thing. Obviously, massively influenced. It's an offshoot of it, but it's not quite a zombie film. They're definitely not zombies in it. But to him, you're not a zombie if you run fast. The Dawn of the Dead remake by Zack Snyder, that doesn't pass the Romero zombie test, apparently. He's pretty strict on it, but it's funny that he became so strict about it years later, when a lot of what made a zombie was seemingly an accident. Them using tools was something that was supposed to be like a profound moment years later in Day of the Dead. But in this film, they're using it a lot, but it's also not that much. It's kind of like, one or two zombies do it at times. You're seeing the rules of the zombies and what they are get formed, a lot of it by accident. And that's kind of the running theme of the production of this film, is the best parts of it were a lot of time not even intentional. Like the social satire, everyone talks about the genius of having the black main character getting shot by a policeman because I've been mistaken for a zombie. Anyone's going to obviously pick up on the symbolism or connotations of that, but apparently it was completely unintentional. Casting was done completely blind. Originally it was a white trucker, but Romero met Duane Jones. He was like, bang, I like this guy, this is going to be Ben. Did one or two tweaks to the character that was more pushed by the actor, but other than that, it's basically the exact same. And him getting shot by the police at the end, just happy accident. But then years later, you speak to Romero and he wouldn't even dream of making a zombie film unless it had some sort of social commentary. When he was in the writing stage with John Russo, he knew he wanted these dead bodies to be coming back to life and reanimate and terrorizing people, but he actually didn't know what they were going to do. He wasn't sure what's their motivation, what's going on. And it seems so obvious, but it took John Russo, his co-writer, to actually say, what if they're driven to eat the flesh of the living? So again, another thing that wasn't so much accident, but it didn't come from Romero himself. It was his co-writer. And even the name, like Night of the Living Dead, Day of the Dead, whatever of the dead, is such a synonymous thing with the rest of the franchise. It's like you couldn't picture it any other way. But the original title, when they sent it off to the distributors, once editing and everything else was complete, was The Night of the Flesh Eaters.
That's shit.
Shit, innit?
Yeah.
And it was actually a distributor at the last minute changed it and came up with the title himself because he realized there was a film from a decade or two earlier called The Flesh Eaters, and they didn't want it to get confused with it.
Good Lord.
So again, so much of what makes this film brilliant actually was kind of either by accident or someone else. I'm not taking anything away from George Romero, because obviously he's the genius, he spawned it all, he's the running theme with the rest of the films, but it's just unbelievable how much kind of magically happened. And it goes back to that, Spielberg on the set of Jaws lesson when the shark wouldn't work, so he ended up coming up with all those creative ways around it because the mechanical shark wouldn't work. And a lot of time it's the obstacles and the problems and how you then solve them is where the creativity actually comes from in the end.
So Barbara ends up stumbling across an abandoned farmhouse. She kind of looks lost without her brother's influence. She kind of I guess she has seen something mad. She's probably in shock. She's stumbling around, and these scenes are us getting into her hysteria. I really like the use of music. You've got that jarring soundtrack on top of you all the time, and I love the shots used here as well. It's her stumbling around and cutting up to close-ups of opening doors and looking around the house. For someone whose first film it's fucking amazing. If it's someone that's just literally picked up a camera with zero budget, I was in awe of the technical marvel of it.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean,
Brilliant.
it was music from Teenagers from Outer Space and The Hideous Sun Demon. Teenagers from Outer Space actually at one point being one of the working titles for the original script, back when they weren't yet Living Dead being revived, but human appearing aliens from another planet, which again shows you how different this movie could have been.
I got so afraid. I ran.
It's funny because a lot's been said in different ways about her performance over the years. Some people were disappointed that she becomes such a powerless character, especially when you follow her from the beginning, even though really it's an ensemble cast, but Ben kind of becomes the main character once he's introduced. Some people have kind of viewed it as like, it's kind of a disappointing female character to have in the film. But I mean, there's another fairly strong female character in the film, and no other female characters in the film go into kind of catatonic state Barbara seems to go into. But looking at it from the other point of view, it's actually kind of awesome. Like, there'll always be a scene where the girl's screaming or freaking out, but then in the next scene she's going about her business. But this felt like a genuine, realistic, traumatic episode. She never recovers from it at all, which is pretty realistic. Like, a lot of time people are just, they see like their brother dies and the people are eating each other's flesh, and then in the next scene and they're fine 10 minutes later. I like the fact that she really was just a mess that never recovered.
Unless you're someone who's trained or conditioned like someone in the army, I think that's quite realistic. If I was to go out, leave this house now, and I saw someone get hit by a bus, I wouldn't be able to move. I'd be like, what the fuck is going on? Let alone someone ripping chunks of flesh in my face when I've just gone to see my dad's grave. It's fucking insane. But it's a slow build up until we are actually introduced to Ben, because as you said, she's just ambling about.
It did have that low budget student filmish sort of feel of, they filled up time to an extent at points, but it worked for me because, I don't want to move too fast. Like, we just got to this zombie thing. We had the freak out of being outside and being chased by that zombie. Now we're inside, and let's just have a breather for a second and creep around the house and see what's going on.
Barbara finds a dead body upstairs, like a rotting corpse with the skull exposed with the eye out. And, I thought the makeup was pretty good for 1968.
Yeah, serious gore for the day, especially when this was apparently one of the very last films released without any sort of age rating, because the border certification was only just going to come into effect like a month later. So literally, if you're a 6-year-old kid, you could have bought a ticket and walked in and watched this. Real crazy gore for the day. Even for now, really, like it doesn't feel like silly or toned down. It is pretty horrific and still realistic enough in the black and white old school camera work and camera quality where the effects still sell themselves. Again, the black and white being really important because all the blood was actually chocolate syrup. It didn't actually resemble the colour of blood at all, but through the black and white, through the camera, it really worked. But we start getting introduced to all the other characters, like Ben. He's immediately running around the house and he's boarding up wood, and finally a character's talking because Barbara hasn't been able to say a word to anyone and still can't say a word to anyone because she's so freaked out still. And we're getting little exposition snippets from him. He's talking about being at the diner when it started kicking off. Everyone came bursting in and the TV's on in the background and the radio, and we start hearing news reports about what's happening. And, the dead are starting to rise, and we're getting all these little nice snippets of information in between Ben trying to board everything up.
Civil defense authorities have told newsmen that murder victims show evidence of having been partially devoured by their murderers. Medical examination of victims' bodies shows conclusively that the killers are eating the flesh of the people they killed. It's a confused situation. It is happening, and it would appear that no one is safe from this wave of mass murder.
Then also we have the family and young couple come up from the cellar, and that creates kind of the ego clash between the dad and Ben, where they just immediately don't like each other. That kind of becomes the running internal conflict between the characters outside of zombies trying to get in. And it's interesting because clearly you're supposed to side with Ben. Morally a good guy, he goes out his way to help people. He comes across as very competent, at least. In these situations, even if someone doesn't necessarily know what they're doing, you need someone to at least sort of try and take charge. Like with Barbara, Barbara was not going to survive in any situation unless someone who's got it together a bit comes along. The dad from the cellar basically got no redeeming qualities in the film. He's kind of just clearly meant to be a piece of shit. But every time I watch it and get older, I look at Ben and think, you know what, you're actually a massive dick as well.
If you're stupid enough to go die in that trap, that's your business. However, I am not stupid enough to follow you. It is tough for the kid that old man is so stupid. Now, you get the hell down in the cellar. You can be the boss down there. I'm boss up here. You bastards! Ben
is making decisions just as much based off his ego as the dad from the cellar is. He might be a more moral character, but he doesn't be the bigger man. He doesn't try and meet the guy halfway.
I'd nickname this guy Fritzl, but there's some PC because he comes from the basement. But yeah. Basement dad is saying it's better to be downstairs, and I was working this out. What is better? Because in my opinion, at least if you're upstairs, yeah, the windows are there and they're going to break through. But if you're downstairs and there's no other way out, surely it is better to be upstairs. What's your opinion?
Supposedly, this has always been like a raging debate between the fans of like who is right. You know the way you do that, you just picture yourself as one of the characters, start arguing with them, like what would you do? And I was thinking, all right, obviously we should have a ready to go plan for boarding up the basement, but also have the option to jump out the windows if we want to make an escape. Do both. But in terms of who is right out of them two, if I have to pick one, I don't even understand how there's a debate, because all the zombies get through the windows, but none of them get into the basement. How there can there even be an argument about who was right? It was clearly the dickhead character who you're not supposed to like or be empathetic with.
Look, the cellar. The cellar, there's only one door, right? Just one door, that's all we have to protect.
But that's why Ben is such a cool character as well, because he's out there as a main character in a film in these days, because, he's black. But then also, he's not the all-encompassing hero who's moral and also gets everything right and makes every right decision. He's a good dude. He's definitely a better dude than the dad and maybe arguably everyone all round. The young couple are very nice, but the boy's a little bit meek. He doesn't really take a leadership role. He kind of ums and ahs between the two guys. But when you think about it, from the get-go, Ben gets everything wrong. Firstly, he's saying they'll never get through the windows. They easily get through the windows. Yeah. He's firing a gun unnecessarily early on, attracting more zombies. He tells them, let's go try and get the car, which ends up killing the poor young couple. There's no way we're going down to the cellar. We'll die instantly. And he ends up being the only character that lives through the night because of going down and hiding in the cellar.
The more I think about it, actually, I think the douchebag guy is right, because the only way that they knew they were there is because he came up. Do you know what I mean? Because Ben says to him, how long have you been down there? You could have been helping us. If they stayed quiet, if they couldn't hear him and they're humans, there's no way the zombies are going to find them. Your point about the shooting the guns and stuff, one thing that really stood out to me, Declan, is, when the windows are boarded up and the zombies are reaching their hands in, the meek young guy comes with a knife, cuts off their fingers for them to retract their hands. And that idiot Ben is just shooting bullets out the window, and they're even like grabbing onto the rifle and pulling it. And it's like, why are you wasting these bullets? But what I did like about this scene, because we're not told till later on how you actually kill these, but I noticed he shot him twice in the chest and then it kept getting up, and then he ends up shooting it in the head and it finally kills it. Because I put myself there in 1968. They'd never seen this. For us, it's like, shoot him in the head, what are you doing? Because we've seen it hundreds and hundreds of times. To the audience of that day, they're like, what, how'd you kill him? Like,
you're so right, because at most modern zombie films or shows, they might have a short scene like that, but it's for the characters, not for the audience, because we know what it is. But it's funny seeing these scenes more drawn out and pronounced, because like you said, they're telling the audience for the first time.
The news report is saying the government's like massing together, they're getting all the scientists from this organisation and that organisation. Then later on, Declan, we see them in a city that's not affected by this. Do you think this is anything to do with the satellite that crashed and the radiation? So the thing that you said earlier about the aliens makes total sense now.
No, you're totally right, because that's basically an artifact from an old draft where it was still aliens and it was going to turn out that they came back on the crashing satellite. Some people point to that as being the sort of de facto go-to original cause of the zombie apocalypse in all the Dead films, but Romero's kind of came out and squashed that. He just wanted one snippet of news/government speculation on what may have caused it. I think he's always wanted it to be a complete unexplainable mystery. I gotta say, I like the young couple characters, I like their little subplot, I like the whole host of characters together, but fuck me, I forgot how fucking hot the girlfriend is. She is gorgeous, right? She is unbelievable.
Even in black and white.
Even in black and white, like the lips, the hair, the everything, like she is a absolute 10.
And to circle back to your previous point, I have to say this, by the way, because it's bugging me ever since you said it.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know the body upstairs? You said it was chocolate syrup. So what does it look like in the colour version? Have they just colour corrected that to red?
Well, remember that colorized versions are someone's gone in and painstakingly colored it.
Right.
That's what original Technicolor was. They wouldn't actually film in color. When you know, when like old films like Gone with the Wind, that era, they had to go in and color it. I think it was kind of filmed in muted colors, and then they would go in and colorize everything. So that's not actually reflective of what the original color would have been.
Yeah, because a lot of those early films, like Gone with the Wind, I find the colour palette too sickly, if that makes sense. It's so in your face, like bright.
Definitely in your face, but there's something about it I just love.
Yeah.
As the zombie hordes are starting to mass more and more outside, you see them actually like feasting and having their blood gore orgies as they're, feasting on all the blood and guts of victims. Roast beef pieces covered in chocolate syrup is what those actors and casts are actually having to eat, which apparently there would just be constantly people throwing up in between takes.
Any sort of scary movie, there's been loads of jokes about the tropes of it. Scary movie, I'm the black guy, I'm gonna die first. They all slowly but surely, one by one, start getting eaten. But if you was to analyze the characters, say there was like a police line behind the mirror, and like which order would you have them dying off first?
I don't know if the black guy would die first, but he definitely won't survive/die last. And I definitely would have expected Barbara to survive the whole film. And when she eventually sees her brother come through as a zombie, which is kind of like a great bit of closure for her, because naturally, she's seen her brother die, but she didn't check his pulse because she was running away for her life. So in her mind, he can still be alive. She can be delusional in a catatonic state and say, she keeps saying, we need to go out and look for my brother. Ben's trying to speak sense and just be like, your brother's dead. Like, come on. But when she sees him walking through as a zombie, reanimated, she just fucking loses her shit and gets dragged out amongst the zombies and eaten. There's something shocking about this female character as well, but this character you've seen the whole way through, who felt like was at least gonna be the main character, even if she ended up not really being. You're like, oh shit, anyone can die in this film.
Now, there's something also going on downstairs in the basement, because basement dad, his wife, and the daughter. Now, this circles back to my point all the time. We've seen these films so many fucking times. If someone is ill with a fever and they're saying like, oh, my daughter's unwell, it's like, they've been fucking bitten. It's kind of sad. We know what's going to happen later on.
To be fair, the one thing Ben did get right as well is he was the only one sounding the alarm of if she was bitten by these things, what kind of diseases might they have? He didn't know that she was going to reanimate, but he was sounding the alarm, to be fair.
Earlier, Barbara, when she sits down, she starts going, oh, it's really hot in here, it's boiling, and I'm like, she's fucking been bitten. Do you know what I mean? Like, she's got a fever, like, that's why. And I don't know, I've just made that up. Maybe there's something in it, maybe there's not.
Here's the thing though, when they're in the cemetery, that was someone who'd been buried, not someone that'd been bitten by a zombie. Every dead person on Earth at once became a zombie who happened to be dead, and then they would eat people. So I don't even know, is it the fact that she eventually died of her wounds, or was the concept that even a zombie slight scratch will eventually kill you and turn you into a zombie? Was that part of the lore yet?
Well, I think it'll be second, judging from all the others that have taken place, but this was the first one. So
but we've already sort of covered that so many of these ideas weren't in place yet and were kind of just born out accidentally, either through limitations of the budget or just someone else throwing an idea out and then running with it.
Reading like old mythology and stuff, there's stuff in even like the Bible of like zombies, and Lazarus came back from the dead even though he was alive. Like, where did he get the idea from? I'm sure there's stuff in like religious texts and about animated corpses, so I'm wondering where he would have got the idea of this.
I mean, I would say kind of nowhere, because zombies as a thing is from voodoo culture, but what they describe as a zombie is, it's not like rising from the dead and stuff. It's more like that hypnotic state kind of thing. Zombie wasn't in the script, and it's not used once in the film. They refer to as either those things out there, or occasionally on the TV at one point, ghouls. I don't even know if zombie was used until the later films. He would make Dawn of the Dead 10 years later, but in between there was loads of zombie films came out. I guess over that period is where zombie became synonymous for what they are. I wouldn't necessarily even connect the voodoo or original use of the name zombie to this film or his idea. And considering we spoke about, at one point there were teenage aliens coming from outer space, it seems like it was an idea that formed organically and naturally and just arrived at this final movie we get over a long time of collaborating with other people and working out a concept.
There's a mass of ghouls breaking in the windows. Unfortunately, Basement Dad was correct and Ben was wrong. They can actually break the windows. They burst in. Ben's trying to fight them off. Barbara is freaking out. She's in shock. She's not helping in any way. Basement Dad's come up and he's sort of like rambling. I don't know if he's gone kind of insane by this point.
Yeah, I think he was having a full breakdown at this point.
He's just got one goal. He doesn't really care about the zombies breaking through the window. All he's muttering to himself is, I need to get the gun. I need to get the gun. The wife's trying to calm him down. It's chaos. It literally is just chaos. Ben and Basement Dad start wrestling. Ben is massive, by the way. Like, he's about 6'4". Basement Dad's a balding, like, old fat guy. And he just wrestles the gun off him. And he decides to shoot him. And I was debating, is that morally correct? Was that right thing to do? I guess he was trying to take the gun to kill Ben. So, yeah.
I think at that point it's completely fair game. But funnily enough, even though their characters hated each other, these two actors actually became really good friends. Not just kind of like, they became close on set kind of stories you hear about films. I mean, for life, till their dying day, became really, really close friends. Spoke at his funeral when Duane Jones eventually died in late 90s, I think it was. The defining thing about their characters in this film is their clash with each other, hating each other right from the get-go, and they ended up becoming lifelong friends after.
Well, you've sort of said to confirm that George A Romero says no to this, but do you think back at that time, 1968, Basement Dad was, this black guy, like he's running the show, I should be running the show, I'm superior, or do you think that's me?
It's got to be there in your mind in the context of the film when you're watching it, but we know for the fact that he wasn't a black guy in the script, and Romero said he personally changed nothing in the script about the character. He allowed Duane Jones to kind of soften certain elements, change a little bit of dialogue here and there. But in terms of intent, it was the same script, just a black actor. So I guess you'd have to say no. But in terms of when you're taking the movie as a real experience as you're watching it, like it's just in your head always. It's got to be in your head.
Was this like a big controversy at the time?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it probably was.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to say.
Due to the violence.
I think one of the main things Duane Jones wanted to not have in the script, he didn't want to be as angry, and he really didn't want to hit Barbara's character, because he was like, hey, you can't have me, a black geezer, hitting this blonde white lady like on screen. But I'm glad they didn't change anything. I'm really glad. Apparently George A. Romero later regretted it, but fuck it. Like, it's cooler that they didn't change anything and really did just cast him as a black guy in this situation. And it didn't have to be about his blackness. His character wasn't defined by being a black dude.
Yeah, you're right. It wasn't a good look, but I see why he done it.
I mean, Barbara was fucking...
She
wasn't helping, was
yeah,
she?
She wasn't
fucking
helping
board up
at
some
all.
windows.
So, Basement Dad is shot. He stumbles back downstairs to his lair in the basement. And hey ho, presto, what do we see? The daughter has got up from her deathbed and she's reanimated. She kills Basement Dad very easily because he's already wounded. The mother runs down and she seems to have gone insane at this point as well, because you can clearly see that she's not human form anymore. Grotesque face, very good makeup again, by the way. And she's just going, oh, my sweetie, my darling.
Oh, baby. Baby.
And this goes back to the use of tools. Picks up a shovel. She falls back. She's looking up at the camera. And I was sitting there thinking, oh shit, I know Ben's going to come and save her. But it's getting closer and closer. I'm like, no, Ben's definitely going to come down in a second. And then he just doesn't. And she just literally like stabs him. It's not as violent as we've seen in other films, but we are in 2024. But it's still pretty bad.
It's the best death scene in the film by a country mile. One of of the best death scenes in all of the Dead franchise. It's how slow it is. And the sound design just goes completely bonkers and goes into this weird electro echo effect, which is, I don't know, it shouldn't work, but it's just fucking brilliant. I love it in that moment. And it is freaky as fuck. Ben, now that everyone's dead, he's free to do what he should have done the whole time, which is go hide down the cellar, which he does. And over the morning, we see all the hicks and hillbillies and sheriffs are rounding up every zombie in the area and killing them. They're throwing them into heaps, burning big piles of them. And it's such a great twist because you're just kind of like, like, I guess everything's going to be okay. Like, I thought it was going to be the apocalypse, but like, it seems like it was sorted out pretty quickly. Like, you know, some riots last a couple of days, but apparently this zombie apocalypse is sorted in one night. But the final twist, just as Ben is creeping up and looking through the window to see if it's safe to come out, bang, he gets shot right between the eyes. One of the biggest shocking twists at the end of a horror film. It's such a sucker punch because firstly, you like Ben, you've been following him the whole fray. He survived everything, he survived the night, and he just gets killed in such a nothing-y, dismissing, needless way. And then it ends and you're just like, what the fuck?
Right, so my immediate thoughts on this was, number one, there's a sheriff there, but the rest of them seem to be, as you said earlier, rednecks with mullets and tashes. He said just straight away, just shoot him right between the eyes. And they looked pretty sketchy to me when he gave that order. So my automatic response was, they're a bunch of racists, possibly KKK, knowing from seeing the opening to Dawn of the Dead, there was racist when the police are raiding the slum apartments. I thought they knew he was alive and they were racist, and they thought, it's a zombie apocalypse, no one's going to question us about killing a black man, so let's just fucking have it.
From what I said at the beginning, you're technically wrong, but there's no technically really in films because none of it ever actually happened. None of it really matters, and it's for your entertainment anyway. So I'm a big believer in if that's what you took from it, then fucking run with that.
What a great film. The birth of a genre. Fantastically, technically amazing, just for someone whose first film it was with no budget. Great soundtrack, great characters. We know that the Romero's a master, like we don't need to see this film to know that, but to see his first work as a film fan, it really is a privilege and an honour.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. When you have directors who are this legendary and this iconic, or you love this much like I love George A Romero, I love when their first film is a low budget, didn't know what I was doing kind of film. Because you can't go backwards. Eventually, he learned how production worked, and his films, I don't want to say they set into a certain tone, but they were probably more predictable, not to the audience, but to himself. Whereas this film, you know, so much of the wonders and beauty and things we all love about the zombie genre was accidental. And, you know, it's those sparks of magic in between the obstacles and the prop that doesn't work and the effect that doesn't go right and the actor that can't sell the moment, so you have to film it in a different way. And, you know, you can't force that and you can't buy it and you can't manufacture it. It's genuine, real, in the moment magic. It's lightning in a bottle, and that's exactly what this film is. Night of the Living Dead spawned my favourite horror franchise of all time, spawned my favourite horror genre of all time, and was just the start of one of the most influential filmmaking careers of all time. So easy recommendation for Night of the Living Dead.
All right, Vince, hit him in the head, right between the eyes. Good shot. Okay, he's dead. Let's go get him. That's another one for the fire.